All right, ladies and gentlemen, good to see you. Ladies, she's Elise Cantu. She's Rebecca Griffith. I'm Jimmy McKay. And the Brunch Bunch, are we still going with that one? If it sounds... I don't love it.
I don't know why you're hating on the Brunch Bunch. Like,
Whoa.
brunch is my love language. It,
Well,
works for me.
I don't hate it. We'll keep it. That's fine. The goal is to have... we sort of just like, hey, listen, get good, smart people together who are excited to talk and good at it. You guys have skills at this. And do that. And usually we pick a topic, sometimes a day before, sometimes 5 minutes before we talk. But usually it's something that's happened in the world, in our lives or something. So we're also going to do a little bit of a spin. Usually it's just us three, but we are going to be four. Four is a bunch as well. And we have a secret guest. Do you guys want to preface or tease this before we bring her on the screen if you're watching the live stream or into the audio? What would you like to, how would you like to introduce this person?
I would say that this person is one of the most authentic and exciting new PTs in the space.
Okay.
So, and just like my clue would be that I have a lot of her stickers.
A lot of her stickers. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like my PT Barbie sticker.
Welcoming to the Brunch Bunch, also known on Instagram as DPTs with Anxiety, K Maestro Cola. Yay!
I like that play on my last name. That was really fun. Maestro Cola. I like it.
I think we got to add to it. You know what I mean?
Right?
How are you doing?
I'm fabulous. I'm having a good week. I go to Disney later today, so I had.
Weren't you just at Disney? Like, weren't you just at Disney?
Yeah, but like I can go back.
I'm not saying you can't go back. I'm just like, hey, good for you, doing the thing repeatedly.
I was like, let's get an annual pass. Why not? I just live in Chicago.
It's a hop skip.
Right?
Rebecca, you brought this one to the table today, the topic that we're going to be discussing or the thing that we're going to go deep.
Yeah.
Let's talk about past first. We did an episode a couple weeks ago where we decided the title of the episode or the topic of the episode about 5 minutes before we started, and we've gotten a lot of messages about that. Yeah. So sometimes it's like an inverse relationship of how much you prepare for something. We did not prepare for that and had great success. I'm not telling you never prepare, but talk about that one.
Oh, that was our episode on grief.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the best podcast episodes I've ever been a part of because I was feeling very alone with my grief that day. And at the end of that, I felt very like surrounded by people who knew what I felt like. And I think the people who were listening had that same experience. And every time a clip comes out, I'm like present to it all over again and have all those feelings again. So thank you for letting us do that.
I'm not in charge.
I meant all of us. Like, thank you for letting us like feel that and do that and share that. And it was hard. That was hard.
And being like outside of the room and like listening in on that, like as someone who's like recently gone through like parental loss, like it was validating in its entirety.
Yay. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, and we got direct messages. I won't say who they were from, but people sort of said, hey, this resonated with me. Like I haven't talked about this. And I think that's it, right? Is like, you don't actually need, here's the thing, kids, you don't need permission to do any of this. But sometimes it sort of feels like it. And sometimes it's like, you need the first person to sort of bring it up before you're like, oh, I'm not the only person. I'm not weird. This isn't abnormal. Like this is okay. And maybe you don't feel it. You weren't feeling it exactly that way. That's cool too. We had differing opinions. I had friends who were close to me who were like, I saw that clip. I watched for 5 minutes and I couldn't. And I'm like, that's okay too.
Yeah.
That's the sort of the beauty of like, we recorded it. And if you don't like it, skip it. There's some episodes of shows I'm watching this. Right. So it's out there. So that's out there. So what are we talking about today?
I want to talk about boundaries.
Okay.
Personal, professional. I feel like it's, I knew Kay was going to love this.
Is that you loving it, or is that you saying like, oh gosh, no?
I've talked ad nauseum about boundaries, and it's been a spiritual journey for the past 7 years. So I'm excited.
It's super hard. So I'm talking personal boundaries, professional boundaries, boundaries of patience, boundaries with like your boss, boundaries with your partners, boundaries with your kids, like your extended family. I think it's it's a thing that I'm not great at and I'm trying to get better at, and I just want to talk it out a little.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, kick it off. Feel free.
So I think my first question is, like, as a semi-recovering people pleaser, like,
Yeah.
how, and I say semi because I still do it all the time, how do you really, like, I feel like I can't set boundaries without feeling like a bad person or feeling like guilt. And I feel like I have enough professional guilt, mom guilt, and stuff already. Like, how do you, like, set those boundaries in an effective way, like, and feel good about it? And, like, what even are they? And, like, yeah.
I think one of the hardest parts about that, and like in being such an overachieving person, and that I know like all of us are, like that extroverted out there, is that we give almost too much than what people are already expecting. So then that then becomes their expectation, which their expectation was far behind. You gave them more, and then they're like, oh, well, I want that. And you're like, shoot, I don't have that bandwidth anymore. So it's like, how do you politely tell them that, like, that it's not my every time that I can do that? I can't be Superman every single time. Sometimes I have to be Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm guilty of this. So we'll do a future episode on this, but out of the four of us, how many of you have taken like those personality tests? Actually, Kay, I think you and I even talked about it. So what, and this isn't the episode to do it, but it'd be a good future one. I took like the Strengths Finders one. I took that because actually I saw a presentation at a conference from some of my former professors who gave Strengths Finders to incoming first week PT students. And I heard them talk about how it's good, and I like a good, who doesn't like a good horoscope or personality test, or which Friends character are you, or what kitchen utensil are you most affiliated with, whatever. We like to like learn about ourselves. And the funny part about that Strengths Finders test was the results did not shock me. They didn't shock you, right?
No.
So mine was like, woo, communication, ideation, futuristic. I was like, oh, that's kind of, but it's cool. It's like a nice warm and fuzzy. Like, yeah, that is me. There's my DNA, right? Where I thought the value came was when I had other people that worked with me, close to me, I found out things about them. And the example I gave is a couple people that I worked with love doing what Jimmy would consider boring things. Boring. Like spreadsheets, which, oh my God, spreadsheets make me nauseous. And the funny part was I was gatekeeping. I was giving those assignments, projects, things to do from them because I was like, I need you to like me. There's my woo. That was preventing me from asking you to do something. Meanwhile, they were like, I'm here to do the spreadsheets. Why wouldn't he give me the spreadsheets? So it was as soon as that like light bulb moment went on, the flow, I had to do less of the things I didn't want to do and more of the things I did. And they got to do the same. So that was like a good way of boundaries, is I was like gatekeeping that thing that I decided is bad. But what I decide is bad is like why a great diverse team is so great and diverse is like, you know, whenever I would work with like groups in PT schools, like I would love to do the presentation part. And people were often like, oh yes, please do. I hate that. And I'm like, dude, it's my jam. So I think that is a good way of like understanding where boundaries maybe shouldn't exist, is like, let's talk about this. And that was a good result of those things.
And kind of the flip coin of that, like when I got hired at my practice, so we're an all women's pelvic floor physical therapy practice. It's phenomenal. And we did like the DISC assessment, which is like 4 kind of DISC. And you were a combination of a couple of them. And we went through it with the team. And I was the only person on my team who did not have the letter S. And which is kind of like that, like calm, like weaving through trouble solving kind of thing. Like mine was very like in your face, creative, and hates rigidity and rules. And Jimmy, like to your point, it's like, yeah, no, that wasn't surprising to me at all. But what was surprising to me was that new mantra of like, do I actually have to lessen myself to fit this people?
Yeah.
And that was like, where did that define my boundary? Because I was afraid to overstep and be too, you know, and be too much, you know, and I didn't want them to necessarily find less because I enjoyed working in this environment.
Yeah, right. So I get this a lot. Like I have a medium-sized to large personality, right? And most of the time, people will be like, "Jimmy wants to take over." I mean, I had someone really close to me be like, "Well, you just want your idea to be the thing," and I was like, "Oh no!" And it's a couple times have happened in the last 10 minutes and 10 seconds. I've been like, "Silence kills me. I want to make everybody comfortable, so I'm just going to talk." But sometimes people are like, why does he just keep talking? And I'm like, I'm not talking to be the loudest voice in the room or the only voice in the room. I'm talking because I'm like, maybe I should start, or maybe I can, help. But I'm also trying to be conscious of like, well, Jimmy steps on toes. And I'm trying to hear that and going like, okay, but do you understand? Like, maybe I can explain why I do that so you can see that what I'm trying to, I like to be called. I was talking with Rebecca yesterday. And she disagreed with me. I love to be Robin. I love it when someone else is in charge. I love to be next to really great, smart people, i.e. the people on the screen and other people I talk to. I love it because it allows me to yes and. It doesn't mean I don't like to be like a person who has an idea or like, hey, everybody, let's go this way and solve the problem this way. I do like it when I'm not the only, like I think Kay's Clark Kent Superman. Yeah, sometimes I don't want to be the, okay, here's the answer to all the problems, because newsflash, we're all just figuring this out.
And I kind of like raise a question to Elise on like what you guys were talking about a couple weeks ago, where it's like, Elise, as you are, promoting yourself and building your brand as the Onco PT, like, are you having some of these like imposter X syndromes? Like, where are you finding like your boundaries in that endeavor?
Kay, it's so interesting you bring this up because there was actually something that went down a few weeks ago on social media where like I for a good chunk of what I have done over the past almost 6 years have really found and have carved out like where I belong on the internet and who I'm connecting with and whatnot. And I posted something that was actually extremely controversial after CSM. And most of my audience were like, oh my God, like, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I saw that too. Oh, that happens over here. And there was like one or like two things in particular that like comments that super stung. And I haven't had that in a while. And so that really forced me to kind of like look at these boundaries of like who I am as a person, and like what you see on camera is like what I look like and what I act like off air. I mean, I like almost attacked Kay when I encountered you at the pelvic floor.
Made me so happy
social at CSM because I was like, oh my God. And so that was something that like I've had to revisit recently as far as like, how do I define where I am, who I'm connecting with, and then also dissociating my worth from like what kind of interactions happen online. So this is actually something Rebecca texted and said boundaries. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be really uncomfortable because I'm working on this actively right now. And I mean, going back to your original question, Kay, like, and again, I'm going to pull what Jimmy said. I'm figuring it out. I am figuring this out both personally, but I've also hired professional help and a therapist to help me navigate this because some of this is hard and it's uncomfortable. And like, I think what really surprised me is even after these almost 6 years, like those things stung and really hurt my feelings. And I was so blessed that I had people who reached out to me and were like, are you okay? And that was really, really beautiful and wonderful and very appreciated. And they know who they are. Thank you, friends, for doing that. Because yeah, these boundaries, they're hard. They're hard.
So I know Rebecca thinks that, and she's right, that I have bad strategies on setting up boundaries, but I'm getting better. Can I talk about an example where I think I did it right and you can tell me or not? Yeah. So I had something similar. So I had a working arrangement with an organization. I do project work, sometimes short, sometimes long form. And I worked with one and I was trying to be very, I did this, ran into the room and was like, I will solve all the, here's how I propose it. Here's how I'm going to solve the problems, because the person in this organization, I thought anyway, made it clear, we're looking for you to step up. So I said, say less, friend, I will step up.
Yeah.
And then I came back with a written plan that said, here's what I see. Here's my idea plan. Happy for collaboration. But here I am stepping up, and gave them the plan. I was then told, slow down. We don't know what's going on right now. So I slowed down and sat in receive mode, right? Then a few weeks later, I was asked, can you step up? And I said, I will step up, except I would like some really clear expectations of what that means both ways. And I was then told, we expected you to be more of a go-getter.
Ooh.
And then I said, I'm never going to reveal who this was. And then, so that person can chill out in case you're watching. And then I said, thank you so much for that analysis. And then I ceased working with this. I did not counter. I just said, this is not a good collaboration, because I read what I thought was your ask for me to step up, which I did, knowing that whatever plan I did, I get it. I'm gonna get real close, but never perfect. Let's work together. And I, again, Elise saying that this is my persona. This is my persona on off live streams. I wanted to say, I need you to explain how I'm not a go-getter, because if you've got a person at your organization that's more go-getter than me, I will work for you for free.
I'll be their Robin.
I will be their Robin, because you can. And then I found a great quote, because I needed a quote to like sum this up. And here it was. You can question my direction, which often my direction is 100 directions at once, but never my speed. So that person questioned my go-getterness, and I was like, we do not share the same reality. I'm very sorry, but they definitely 100% had a different experience. They were looking at the flip side of this experience. I don't know what that was, because they weren't able to communicate it with me. And I was like, this seems like we're not close. So I'm just gonna, if that's what your analysis after 3 months was, I'm not a go-getter.
Ooh.
Then I'm just not the type of go. Then maybe we have different definitions of what that term is.
Did you take that feedback personally?
Yes, in the moment. But I heard, and I told her this, I heard my friend Sky Donovan's voice in my head saying, do not Bronx, New York react. I'm good like that. But I just said, and like the person giving me this feedback, it was a video call too. They were like, oh, you're not saying this. I'm like, I am processing your feedback on this. And then when I hung up, I called a friend and gave it a Bronx. I'm like, I need you to explain this to me. Am I a go-getter or not? You can do not give me the answer you think I want. Am I a go-getter or not? And she was like, I don't understand how someone could not. And then I laid the situation out fully. I wasn't trying to win this situation. I was like, here's 7 locations where I might have been wrong. Help me understand where this person could have seen that. And she was like, I don't understand that. At no point in your existence is that a thing. Again, question my direction. Yeah, sometimes I'm in the wrong direction. I think we're all guilty of that. But my speed, it was confusing to me. It went against where this all started. It went against everything in my StrengthsFinder's DNA. I was like, I don't get that, my friend.
Ooh.
Well, that's like something that I said to Rebecca recently when we were talking about like, putting yourself out there and stuff. And I'm like, in the end, like, and this is literally like this quote I want tattooed on my forehead. Like, you can be the entire package and sent to the wrong address.
Oh
so
my
did that
God.
just like shock you to the core? Like that like changed my chemical makeup of everything.
I've had you on the podcast. So when I release this audio on the podcast, but maybe the other ladies haven't, when they release it, like a little context for you quite literally did that. Is like, you were like, hey world, I'm like, explain what DPTs with Anxiety, your Instagram page. It really is sort of our imitating life. It really is you, but putting something out there, it's simple, right? Just get a camera or an account, but it's not easy.
No. And, it kind of calls back to what you had said in the beginning. And it's like, no one's giving you permission. And when they don't give you permission, it feels weird.
It does.
It's so freaking hard.
This girl thinks she is out here saying these things.
Yeah. And it was actually, my therapist who made me make the account.
It's also such a great therapist, Flex. Like,
she's like my biggest fan. I love her so much. She's my longest relationship, and I've been in a happy relationship for 7 years. So that's something.
Oh man, this is making me feel really bad about myself, because I've gone to therapy twice and I've been discharged both times, and they've been like, you're all set.
We got to find you a new therapist.
You were the whole package at the wrong address.
Yeah.
You were not at the right address for a therapist.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And again, because I'm going to make this all about me, but that we have to, right? Because I don't want to speak in hypotheticals. And I have a core group of friends. The women know who they are, and I've had them all on the show before. And including some of the women on this screen who are like, you're fantastic. And I'm like, I know, thank you. But it still does. It's like, well, you're my friend. Of course you're saying that. So there is this internal doubt of like, I don't know if I'm good enough, right? Like, so, I mean, I'm looking for a new job right now. This is the first time I've said that publicly, is I had a job and then my dad had a stroke and that job ended. And then I was like, I'll find something. And what I do is weird. So, but now that's, months have gone by and nothing's sort of panned out. I'm like, I mean, I've turned to people close to me. I'm like, maybe I'm a really, really good bullshitter. And maybe my bullshit skill just ran out. And now I'm exposed. And people are like, no, what you provide, what you're selling, no one's buying. And it's hard to it's hard to get out of bed when you do that. And sometimes,
Rebecca, he needs permission. Go sprinkle him with your magic. What permission does Jimmy need?
I don't know. What do I need?
I mean, I have been trying to apply permission to Jimmy, but I think Jimmy's not giving himself permission to own his greatness right now, because the uncertainty is kind of weighing on him to the extent where it's hard to see anything else. And when you're feeling uncertain about your performance, you're feeling uncertain about your future, you're feeling uncertain about your life and your place in it, it's very hard to be the great human that you are. It's hard to see that. It's hard to drive that forward, and it's hard to sell it. And so I think that's part of the issue. I think all of us on this screen have had that issue where we're like, what are we doing? Who are we? Like, why is this happening? And like, even for me, like trying to take this next step forward in the things that I'm doing, it's scary, it's hard. And I think maybe we need to have some boundaries with ourselves too, about how we speak to ourselves, about how we create our futures, about the futures that we're willing to live into.
Do you know Ryan Holiday? He wrote Obstacle is the Way. He's like a writer in the Daily Stoic. He's got a pretty big podcast. He's a super smart guy. So anyway, stoicism I always thought meant like just standing there and being punched in the face and not right. Exactly what Elise just made, that face. Like, I am giving you nothing. And he really said, he's like, it's not. It's like came from like the ancient Greeks. It's like this idea of the world happens to you, like, no offense, but the universe, you're not a big enough deal for the universe to conspire against you. You are a unique snowflake and you're very important, but that's not how the universe works. He said stoicism is sort of this mindset of everything doesn't happen to you. It happens. What do you own your responses? Mm-hmm. And now I can't remember where I was going with that when I started explaining with Ryan Holiday. He essentially is saying like, this happened. Now I get to pause and in the moment decide how I will then go forward. And that's simple, but not easy, because we do personalize and take that personal. And this guy cut me off in traffic. And I'm like, did he? Or is he just a crappy driver? And you happen to be like, I've seen people who cannot let this go.
Yeah.
Who can't. And you play video games online and you hear people who cannot let this go. And I think it's a superpower. As soon as you're like, this is not about me in the best way. This is about them. And you can turn the video game off or park your car and you're like, that wasn't about me.
I know, but I'm going to challenge you and say that some of us are not living with main character energy in our own lives in which we are the main character. And so I think a huge problem is that when we're talking about boundaries,
yeah,
when you are making your whole life around the people in your life and like helping them, supporting them, driving their futures forward, it leaves very little left for you. And so your main character energy is being spent on supporting everyone else in your life. It's very hard. It's very hard to kind of move your own self forward like that. And I think I'm guilty of that. I know a lot of parents are guilty of doing that, like focusing on everyone else first. And, they say put on your own oxygen mask before you help the people around you. But where's the boundary in that? Like if I know that the airplane's going down and that my kids need oxygen, do you really think in that moment, my first thought is going to be like, I need to apply my own oxygen mask? Absolutely not. My first response is going to be making sure every one of my kids has exactly what they need first. And so how do we set boundaries? I mean, professionally, right? But also with the people in our lives that need us.
Something, that's so just like I've been working the past year and a half on is process without a goal. And that is the most terrifying thing my therapist has ever had me consider.
What does that mean?
I don't like that. I don't even like the sound of that.
Yeah. And so she's like, you just spent the past 21 years of your life in academic mode, striving for this doctorate degree that you now obtain. So what you're so busy trying to strive for something that you're missing the now, and you're
Yeah.
not enjoying the process when you're trying to reach your goal. But if you remove the goal and enjoy the process, and if the goal is just, if you need a goal, it's living in this space right now, you know? So Elise and Jimmy, like I challenge you, like, what have you done in the past 6 months that was for you to, when was the last time you were actually in the moment without thinking about your next steps?
Yeah. Not a lot. And I think that the funny part is the phrase is, remember who brought you to the dance, right? Like, remember what got you here. I started my podcast and doing things that I now get to do professionally or semi-professionally, professional amateur. And the goal was have fun, learn stuff. But you're surrounded by stuff. It's like, well, how am I going to monetize this? How am I going to make this my job? It's like, well, ironically, the have fun, learn stuff came first, and then money came way later. And that was a nice bonus. But then as you go deeper into it, then you're like, okay, well, this needs to hit all the time, right? I knew a guy who owned a bike shop, and on the walls, I watched old pictures of him being a cyclist. And I'm like, do you ride a lot now? He's like, no, I hate bike riding now because I made the bike shop my job. And I was like, oh, he's like, I ruined it.
Same with cakes.
Ooh.
Cakes.
I love baking. I'm actually like fairly good at it, like making cakes. I don't sell them. They are gifts to people. Yeah. But I don't sell them because I don't want to hate it.
So is there a guiding principles? Like if someone's listening now, I'd love to hear if you have boundary problems too. I think this is probably more prevalent than we think. How do you know, and what do we do about it? Like I want people who are watching or listening to have tactics. Like gotta spot it. And then what do you do about it? Like a few key things. And this is for everybody. How do you know? And what might we do about it? Let's do the how we know first.
For me, and this is something that I am working on. Okay. So like I very much am working through like, this is a very bad reaction. But in the past, I realized finally that I was upset that a boundary was crossed when I was getting angry. And like I would be angry about it. And it wasn't until that moment, because I mean, again, coming from, and we could get into this all day long, eldest daughter syndrome, people pleaser, all the things, right? It was so much like give of yourself in service to others, etc. And it would then escalate to the point I was like, I am angry about this. And it was like I was feeling the surface emotions and I was feeling the surface emotion and not really picking up on why I was feeling that way. And so then I would get angry. I would be angry. And so that's something that I'm really, really like intentionally working on and honestly, again, thank God for my therapist. She's having me question like, why are you angry? And that for me has been a very, very hard process. I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm trying to keep myself from getting to that point of assessing my boundary has been crossed here. Now, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah. And I think that latter part is that we almost have to be toddlers to ourselves. And when we feel emotions, why? And it's like, it's the most annoying thing. But like, if we're not actually, go until you get to, it's because I said so, and then ask why again.
Oh, I have been doing this with my kids because I want them to know how to manage their emotions in a healthy way. And it has been very hard for me. And particularly my youngest child is the one that I've been really focusing on. And I don't know if it's because I've learned more from child 1 to child 3, or it was just apparent that was the thing that I could do for her. And she is now so good at it that she'll reflect it back to me. And like, I was really frustrated about something the other day and just like upset. And she was like, Mom, it's okay to feel like that. It's okay for you to cry. And I'll never forget, there was a moment like early in my surgical recovery where I had been like optimistic at the beginning of the day, been feeling really good. But like by the end of the night, I was like, overstimulated. Everything hurt. I couldn't get comfortable. I was upset. I was sad. I was like, everything felt so bad. And all of the men in my house were trying to help me in different ways, right? Like my husband was taking care of the kids, making dinner, like bringing me water, asking if he could help me reposition. You know, my oldest son came and just sat next to me. He just sat there. And my middle child, who has autism and is just like the loveliest, like he didn't want to like be in it. So he would run in and he would go, "Sparkles!" And then he would run back out. And then my daughter finally came home and I was like, "I need you." And she climbed in that bed with me, wrapped her arms around me. She's 9 years old, wrapped her arms around me and said, "Mommy, everybody hurts sometimes." And then she said, "Daddy, put the song on." And she held me while she sang a little REM to me. And she petted me like I was like her baby. And it was like, she goes, "This will get better and I will stay with you until you feel better." And I just laid there so sad. And like everything just felt bad, but I was like so taken care of by this person. And to me, that was when I realized that like all of that work I had invested in my children was being reflected back to me. And that was like the coolest thing, the coolest way to have invested any portion of my life to see that like come back to me. But at the same time, I also need to figure out how to have boundaries with my kids.
Because then yet you were saying yesterday, you were like, "Please don't touch me."
I did that last night when I came home from PT. I was kind of in pain. I was irritated and frustrated. And like everybody wanted something. And I just said, they were like, "Hey, do you want to like snuggle? Do you want to like read together?" I said, I just don't think I can do that tonight. My body doesn't feel like it can handle anything else right now. And all three of my kids were great about it, but it was like super clear with it. And then this morning they all asked my permission. They all said, "Hey, do you feel better? Can I give you a big hug before I go to school?" I was like, "Of course you can."
So Rebecca's How to Parent course is $49.99 on Kickstarter.com.
It's my life's work. It is my life's work. Everything else I do is a hobby, right? So,
Well, and that's where I think, communication of boundaries, even if you're still trying to figure it out, is so important. And that was something I learned from having a partner who has autism, is that everything was, growing up, it was very verbally manipulative a little bit, where like there was always a hidden agenda to things, or, you say something in an off tone. And then, I'm with him where it's just straight and honest.
Yep.
And he would go to me and he looked at me one time and he's like, "Do you need an answer or do you just need to be heard?" And it was the first time anyone has ever asked me that. And that is just now our go-to. And I say that to patients. I'm like, "Do you want me to fix this or do you just want to be heard and validated?"
There was, it's one of those stories where like, is this real? But it was like a parent reflecting on their two kids. And it was like a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. And the 6-year-old called the 9-year-old over with a puzzle or something. And the 9-year-old said, "Do you want me to show you how to do it or follow your instructions?" And it was like, oh, that's smart. Because I've heard this from, smart relationship people, is men typically are like, if you're telling me about a problem, I'm like, got it. Okay, here I come to solve it. And I'm going to start now telling you what to do. And it's like, hey, that's not a great idea. I learned that like 6 or 7 years ago. That's a life hack. So like listening before you talk. Who knew? Listen before you talk. Wait a minute. That's the order? I'm like, I don't know if you know this about me, but I can talk way faster than I can listen. So I do that because that's the skill I possess. So that's step one. Step two is saying it out loud, which is, do you want me to just listen or do you want me to do something about this?
I think a hard boundary that I've learned is trying to figure out like when I am giving too much to someone who's not yet ready to take it.
Yep.
And I'm really actually thankful that I learned this through like growing up with like a medically complex parent compared to early in my professional career, because it saved me a lot of, I think, that early clinician burnout of trying to save the world.
Yep.
Especially in pelvic health with such, and I'm sure with like cancer and oncology as well, and like ED, like there's so many different layers there than almost like traditional physical therapy is thought of, to where I can take that and shelf it. And it's like, that was a very hard thing to learn, is that, and Jimmy, it's kind of like, you came in hot and heavy with this like full 10-page plan that you probably spent 6 hours on. And for them to slap that back in your face, that's probably what hurt the most.
Well, yeah, the when I had the plan and they were like, "Hey, slow down because like things are in flux," I was like, "Yeah, totally cool." So I did that. So that was the thing that hurt, is like I stepped up. You said, "Hey, I like what you're doing," or "Hey, right now it's in flux. We'll come back to this." Then I did that, and then I got told, "We thought you were more of a go-getter," and I'm like, "Hang on a second." So I did a thing, then I did a thing. I did what you asked, and then I got in trouble for it, or I got looked at for it. Alyssa brings on or uses the word that you just used, Kay, which is layers. Boundaries are hard. She says she worked a lot on that concept. It's gotten better, but it still isn't. It's simple, but it's not easy or intuitive. And then, and I agree with this. This is what I was sort of trying to say on top of it too. If imposter syndrome is laid on top of it, it gets even harder, because now you're not giving your true answers. Even if you are, you're thinking, "What's that person want me to do?" So I'm now. Everything's a mirror of a mirror. It's a photocopy of a photocopy. It's like, here's what I would do, but now I'm wondering what you want me to do, so I'm doing that. It goes back to that Kurt Cobain lyric or quote. It's like, "I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for what I'm not." It's like, in this situation, do I act how I think you want me to act, or do I act how I really am?
I think the problem with imposter syndrome and boundaries also is that you're like, "I can't believe they asked me."
Correct.
And so you spend all this time like being delighted to have been asked and flattered to have been asked. And then you say yes to all these things that are not consistent with your goals. And it's very hard to say no, because you also, that imposter syndrome is like, what if no one ever asks me again? And you're like, I have to do it.
So this
with that opportunity.
I get it on this as well. Yes. Which is, I've got to say yes. And trust me, I will tell all of you and anybody I talk to, it's very easy for me to give advice, talking before listening. It's very easy for me to give advice. I can see it coming in other people, and then I step on the same landmine. Because as soon as you say yes, you have to do it. You say yes to a price, say yes to a job, say yes to helping a friend move on a Saturday, anything. I maybe like one of the tactics is you have to fast forward into life and go, what am I going to feel like while I'm doing that? Do I want to do that or not?
Ooh.
Put yourself in that moment, which is not easy, because in the moment, I want to make that person like me.
Yep. And I'll be finishing something and like trying to do something, and I'll be like, regrets are present. Mistakes were made. Like, how did I end up doing this thing? How did
risks were calculated? She was bad at math.
Yes.
Say that again.
The risks were calculated, but she was bad at math.
Is that a song lyric?
No, it's one of those stupid bird memes.
Oh, got it.
My love language is memes, Jimmy. It's kind of my brain.
Jimmy, you know how when we were talking about professional development planning, I said you have to have lots of mentors, and you need to have at least one mentor that's younger than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kay is the mentor. She's found.
At least you're also like way younger than me, so I'm counting both of you.
I heard that a while ago. You should have one mentor 10 years older than you, and you should have a mentor 10 years younger than you. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm just like, well, it keeps you grounded. Like, it keeps you sort of like not being able to skew, because you're the sum of all of your experiences, right? But all of your experiences are behind you, far behind you. So like, you can learn from someone who's plowed through or part of that life professionally or personally, and then behind it's like, remember what that's like. Also, the now for that person 10 years younger than you is totally different than when you were there. It's wild.
Speak the language. They're risen and capping and
all of it.
Okay, I'm getting pretty good at that because I do have a high schooler.
I love the Steve Buscemi meme where he's like wearing the Cyber's base. Hello, fellow young people. Like, that would be a great meme. The Steve Buscemi line, and I feel like that's what, I'm not going to knock them too much, but that's what so many recruiters in healthcare, it doesn't matter, any of them, they're always like trying to talk exactly like their target audience, and they use all like the words, and it's like, it's glaringly obvious when you don't know what you're saying, because I'm around kids too, and I don't even try it.
I've just started saying it in a really exaggerated old person way. I'll be like, wow, son, that outfit is bussing. There are absolutely no caps visible. All I am seeing are the flames that are coming from that fire. 100%. Hundo P, boss.
There was
people.
somebody who was like, they had a picture from like a lecture hall in college, and they're like, my professor is, I don't know, it was like something like chemistry or physics, has a spreadsheet of all slang terms, and he brings up, it's like, wait, what was that? And he like brings up the spreadsheet and puts the new term on. I don't think he was doing that to be funny. I think he was like, God, there's so many. This person's mind was like, there's a list of terms and I have to learn them. And he literally spreadsheeted it. So I thought that was great.
In the next episode of my parenting course, I will reveal that there are flashcards for slang to be able to communicate better with your high schooler.
What are the words? Riz is a word.
Riz, like bussin', cat no cap. There's like chuggy. There's so many. There's so many. It's the biggest one I get right now is real. For
what is it?
Yeah.
Bruh. Everybody's bruh now. Bruh.
And
It's gender neutral. It's 2024, and we're looking at a more inclusive environment. So if everybody is bruh, then you never have to misassume anyone's gender roles.
It was
which
like,
I think is very powerful.
it was like dude, like 10, 15, 20 years ago. Everybody was dude.
Dude is such a 90s gender generic term.
Yeah.
I think with the Steve Buscemi meme, though, it is like the perfect embodiment of this episode almost, with like imposter syndrome and boundaries. Because like that meme, he crossed a boundary.
I'll give you an example of where, and this is real life therapy. That it's funny if we were just talking and not streaming this, it would be different. But that it is, you just keep going. It's like live therapy. So I'm looking for jobs now in and out of healthcare. I've been pushed and questioned by people close to me. Why do you keep looking for jobs in PT? I was like, well, I have a degree there. They go, but your degree proves that you can learn, gave you experiences that maybe you need to take it outside. So that I have the PT degree and my media degree and background and whatever. Now I'm going to like PR agencies or communication agencies that are hiring, and I keep reading their job descriptions and requirements, and I'm like, oh no, I can't even apply to that one. I don't have that. Like I keep looking at those as like, they're not good. And then there really aren't job offerings a lot in PT for like communicators. Like, trust me, it's needed. No offense, but like it's needed because it's always needed, communications. But typically they don't advertise for it. So there's really no place for me in PT, or it looks like it. Like no formal, there's no formal door for me to knock on. Because every job I've gotten since I graduated from PT school has been weird, but I sort of created a side door. I literally just cut a door in the wall and was like, I'm coming in. And the doors outside that are formal doors, I'm like, I literally jump in that Steve Buscemi outfit and I'm like, oh, I don't think I fit. This person, I could never do that job. But meanwhile, I would look at someone else and be like, just send the application. Who cares? What are they going to do? Say no? Who cares? Send 50. Chris Do. I know I've suggested that on my podcast numerous times. Chris Do is also known as The Future. He's a graphic designer, but he's like sort of like a thinker in terms of like knowing your worth and how to communicate it, and just being, he's almost like a negotiation guy for like creatives. And he right now is having a 100 rejection challenge. If you try to fail and succeed, which have you done? So he's like, go get 100 no's in a row. Go. But as soon as you get to 57 and someone says yes, you have to go back to 0, and you have to get to 100 in a row, right? So I did this. I think I told Rebecca to remind me about this, right? Yep. Yeah. I was out with my buddies, and I was like 21 years old and was out, and it was cold in upstate New York. And as soon as I had my first beer at this bar, I was like, I want to go home, but you drove. I want to go home. There's like 5 or 6 of us. And my buddy was like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to. And I'm like, I need a ride home. I want to go home. Pre-Uber, everybody. Wrap your head around that. I couldn't just call an Uber. And he goes, okay, you can go home, but you have to do something. This is what guys do. You have to do something embarrassing. And I was like, got it. Whatever I have to do to get me out of here. I don't want to be here. And he said, you have to do the most ridiculous pickup line to any girl in this bar that I pick out. And I'm literally putting my coat on. I go, great. If me getting what I need to get home is on the other side of one rejection, say less, kids, say less. So I walked up and gave a pickup line. And the problem was it worked. And 3 years later, our friend from our friend group in high school was an actor. The line was in a movie. He used the line in a movie. I'll find the movie reference later. But our friend's name is Dave Annable. He's been in Yellowstone. He's been in a bunch of stuff. And the pickup line was so awful. Kids, don't use this one. So I'm literally putting my coat on. She's coming in the bar. I'm like on the way out. Start the car. I'm about to fail right here. excuse me, could you just tell me how much a polar bear weighs? And she was like, and I said, enough to break the ice. Hi, I'm Jimmy. Nice to meet you. Figuring she'd be like, you're creepy. Keep moving. And I would be like, great, that happened. Let's go to the car so I can go home. Problem was, she was like, that's hysterical. And I'm like, it's not hysterical. Please don't make me stay here.
Maybe that was when the boundaries should have come down.
Before I gave the pickup line?
Because she liked the pickup line. That should have been like a red flag. And you're just like,
So now, and then it would wound up being like a meme before there were memes, is my friends would be like, hey, polar bear line, huh? That became sort of our thing. And I was like, I know, like when you try to fail, it's like polar bear line it. I'm like, okay. So maybe I need to polar bear line it. Maybe I just need to start sending out. Well, I've thought about what if I did a media campaign about me getting a job? Because if I'm going to work for a company and I say I can get attention, me doing a campaign that gets attention is art imitating life or life imitating art. I don't know. I thought about that, but then I also saw like people don't typically put out into the world that I need a job. Like that's very like, oh, why couldn't you just find one? People
also the guy who literally sent a mixtape to the radio station.
Do that. Yeah. I know. I've had that conversation with other people. I'm like, what's my version of because I wrapped a resume in a CD and a burner phone in a birthday present wrapping paper and then sent that to 3 radio stations. And that's how I got my first interview. It's not how I got my first job. The interview got me the job. The birthday present got me. I'm like, what's my version of that? I'm like, I don't know what the version of that is. Maybe it is me making 30 videos in 30 days about why I should do any of those things.
I think this really brings up something that we talked about either last week or the week before about, speaking something into existence. And I think I'm going to pull back what Rebecca said, which is you're putting it out there for then others to hold you accountable to. And again, Rebecca, thank you for teaching me this. Now it's actually happening. So I'm like, oh my God, I should have been doing this all along. But that really maybe this is your way of doing that, Jimmy, of putting it out there so that you can then be held accountable to yourself.
So here was my idea. Ready for this? Yeah. I went to ChatGPT and I uploaded everything about me. My StrengthsFinder's profile, my resume, my experience. I just told it, here's me. Right? Then I said, great. Do you think you need to know anything more about me? And ChatGPT was like, I think I have a good handle on it. I said, now pretend. Oh, no. I said, give me an analysis of companies or organization types of companies that I would be a 100 out of 100% fit. And it gave me a bunch. Peloton, Fitbit, Google Health, Apple Health, all these different. I was like, okay, cool. That's, I get it. Now I said, pretend like you're a recruiter for those types of companies. And I want you to give me 20 questions you would ask me on an interview to make me be able to show the most me. And it gave me the questions. And then my idea was answer each one of those questions in less than 60 seconds and share them as a video. Mm-hmm. Essentially, if I can't get an interview, I'm going to interview myself. And what if nobody watches it? Who cares, I guess? I would say who cares? Wow. But my internal, even me, I've got a lot of confidence. Although I heard someone say the other day, confidence is a skill. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool.
Well, I think for some people it is definitely a skill, and I think for other people it's wildly unearned.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
There are people walking around with plenty of confidence that maybe
they don't deserve, or
it's not that they don't deserve it. I think maybe it's what you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty confident as a second-year PT student. I thought I knew everything. But now that I've been a PT for 16 years, I'm like, God, I'm not sure I know anything. So I think it's some of that, too, just where you are in life and what experiences you've had. I was interviewing potential PT students to get into PT school once. And I asked in this interview, I said, tell me about, a hardship you had to go through and, how you managed that. And because that was one of the questions on the list. And this beautiful human just looks at me and says, well, I don't know. I've just been super blessed. I've never really dealt with anything difficult before. And I was like, oh, okay. Wow. And I just thought, I wonder what it's like to just live life like that.
What would your answers to that question be? I'm interested. You have to pick one because it's an interview.
I don't even know what I would pick.
It's hard in the moment
I'd have to sort my emotional baggage and like choose out something that's not too scary.
because you're also taught to find something that you can show your strength, right? Like twist the negative to a
Right.
positive, or
Ooh.
I mean,
I
my
mean-
trauma may be funny, so I just kind of come in hot and heavy with jokes.
Yeah.
My dad just lost his job in 9/11, and so that was like a huge like family economic upheaval, and so I think it kind of in a very, which again we're unpacking in therapy, it taught me to go within to like find strength and not rely on others, which again, like maybe not a good thing. That's a skill I'm unlearning a little bit, but that's what I needed in the time to survive. So
Mhm.
I lost my job in 9/11 too because I'm
Really?
way older
How?
than
What do you mean? Like, how are these connections? Like, what do you mean?
I worked for Merrill Lynch.
Oh,
what? I didn't
doing
know.
what?
I was a client associate. You know those phone calls when you make a phone call someplace and they're like, this call may be monitored for quality assurance.
Yeah.
I was the person that did the monitoring.
Oh, I thought that was just a legal disclaimer so they could record it.
Mm-mm.
You actually
Nope.
listen
I
to
would
those?
listen to people's phone calls and I would make sure that they were giving out the right advice and I would audit their customer service and then all their like computer stuff too. I would also
Oh.
audit that. I was 19. Do you know people who are adults do not like having 19-year-olds audit their work?
I could see that. I could see that.
And again, I was that person with the overinflated self-confidence. So
Listen,
I was not super popular, but yeah, I worked while my husband went to college, and after 9/11, Merrill Lynch shut down all its like
yeah, I
its
bet.
massive Denver service center, and I almost moved to New Jersey.
When I get a call on my iPhone and it says probably spam, I answer the call and I say, "Hi, this is Jimmy McKay Enterprises. Your call may be recorded for quality assurance purposes. You can go ahead." And it confuses the hell out of them because they have a script. So they know their first words. Their first words are you say hello, then I start. But when I start with quality assurance purposes, they get jammed up. And I like that.
I'm not even going to tell y'all how old I was during 9/11.
I think that's precious. As long as you're alive, I'm okay with that.
it was, yes.
I was 20. I was 21. I just graduated from college like that because in September I graduated in May. So I was still
funny.
sleeping on my mom's couch looking for my first job in radio and started running the next day, like to get back in. I was just angry. So I started running. I wasn't ever a runner, but I was like, I'm mad. What are you going to do? I was like, run up and down the road.
I think that's a healthy boundary. That's a healthy
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how to process this. I'm like, so what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. Run up, run. Put headphones in, run around.
I think the title of this episode should just be The PT Bunch Goes to Therapy.
Woo.
I think
DIY.
so. I've heard. So I listen to some podcasts, and some of them are very outlined. Right, there's a clear narrative that they're going to do, and but sometimes it's more of a morning show. Like I don't anymore, but I used to listen to like Adam Carolla, and there was like a guest, and they sort of had an idea, and I've helped some people with part of that process of how do you interview a guest to make sure when you push play, the audience is getting something and keeps listening. But also there is this other, which is like, here's an idea, drop it in the middle. Let's see what happens. Because that's also how we talk in real life.
Yes.
Like if we were four sitting somewhere at CSM or wherever, if we just met up in Denver, we wouldn't come with an agenda to hang out. It'd be like, what's up? And then something would bubble up and we'd chew on it in circles. And then we'd be like, well, and it's just stories.
Oh, I can't wait for that to happen. You're all invited to Denver.
All of our brain cells just like bouncing off one another, each singularly passing from one to the other.
There's nothing like summer in Denver. I'm just going to say that.
Which leads to something Rebecca just said last time we spoke, which is sort of put words to a thing. I was like, oh, that's one of my problems. Do you know what I'm talking about? You're smiling. You know what I'm talking about? The wow and the how. So I have no problem coming up with piles of wow. And then all of a sudden it's, well, which one do I do? Because I can only do one thing at a time. And then, oh, how do I do that? Also, it's never like, can I do this? How do I do this with the other 49 things I started but didn't finish just yet?
That's ADHD.
Yeah, I think I got an extra scoop of that.
You know what you do? You put them all on popsicle sticks, and then like the date night jars, and then one day you just like pick out a popsicle stick, and you're like, all right, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, how do we wrap this up? Parting shots is usually what I do for my podcast. Parting shot, just a good way to sum up. Okay, what do you got?
I'm trying to think about something like always ask yourself why. Be your own toddler.
I like that.
Ew.
Good. Why? Why'd you say it?
Oh. I would like to just facilitate the work. I don't want to like do the work.
Oh man, the worst. It's the worst.
The how
Well,
part
that's
is the worst.
What do you got?
So I actually have a really like tangible experience of when I actually set a boundary and stuck to it very recently. So Rebecca and I actually talked about this previously. This fall, I was actually in works to negotiate with a local cancer center to move in and provide care. Like it was on paper going to be the absolute best experience. And around that time, I also did Rebecca's professional development planning thing. So I was very clear on some things and things just kept not aligning. And I was like, oh, I have to make it work. I have to make it work. And it got to the point it was not going to work. And I was not going to be able to work and provide patient care how I needed to, and also be a healthy individual in the process. Like I knew that for me. And those boundaries were clear for once in my life. And so I actually walked away from this deal. It was terrifying. And I was like, I am never going to get this kind of experience again. Like I just walked away from the best opportunity of my life. Not 2 weeks later, I was into another facility where I opened up my private practice for patients. And it is better than I could have asked for previously. And it felt scary to say no and walk away from it. But it's because of those boundaries I was clear on that I was able to make that informed decision and come out better on the other side. That is the first time in my life it has been so immediate. And like, man, was it cool to see that happen. So I know it's scary. I know imposter syndrome is real. Like, am I going to get this opportunity again? Maybe not, but you're going to get a different opportunity, and have faith in that.
The best opportunity you've gotten so far.
Yeah, so far.
It's the power of yet.
Rebecca, what's your parting shot?
All right. I've got a
Okay.
quote because you said quote. So I'm ready for my quote.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have it hanging up to help me with my imposter syndrome and my boundaries. You have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage, pleasantly, smilingly, non-apologetically, to say no to other things.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is by having a bigger yes burning inside.
Yeah. I forgot I texted you all last night to bring a quote. And then you all, of course, did, but I forgot to ask for it. So at least you have a card there. What's your quote?
I'm going to build on Rebecca's. So this is a quote from the famous aviator, Bessie Coleman. Every no takes me closer to a yes. And there's a lot of ways to unpack that, but I'm going to leave
All
you.
right.
Ew.
I think that one hits on me. Kay, you had consulted Candy.
I did. Yes, I had a Dove chocolate, but actually after today's conversation, I'm changing my quote to something someone told me at CSM, which was get at least one no a day.
Ooh.
Because if you're not, are you reaching high enough?
Yeah.
Screw it. Okay, so I'm making a promise. Today's March 7th. I don't know who I'm gonna get 7 no's in the next 7 days. Big ones, not little ones. They have to be. So I'll do that. But then my quote was this yesterday, which is, if it doesn't bring you peace, profits, or purpose, then don't give it your time, energy, or attention. I saw that one yesterday and I was like,
But then you can't ever have kids.
Purpose.
All right. Purpose.
Because you need to give time, energy, and attention.
And peace.
Ladies, thank you so much for giving me your time and your friendship and your insights. And everybody listening, thanks for doing that. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I love being a special guest.
Oh my God.
I love you, ladies. And Jimmy.
You're everybody's special guest.